Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is BecxReadz, and today I am going to share with you my thoughts and feelings and my experience as a first-time big book convention goer. I attended Apollycon 2024 this year in Washington, D.C., and as my first time, I just wanted to share my experience with you guys and answer any questions that you have. I will link my Apollycon vlog and haul down below so you can go check out those and get caught up on my experience, but this is just me talking through more of it. I didn't really talk about anything in my vlog as far as my experience went, other than what I was doing in the moment. So this is just like a more detailed look into my experience. I believe Apollycon was the 25th through the 28th of April. However, I only had a deity ticket, so most of what I did was only on the 27th, which was the actual signing date for deity ticket holders. So I did arrive Friday the 26th in the afternoon. My sister and her best friend also went to DC with me. They did not go to Apollycon, they just hung out in DC, but they went to help like offset the cost of a hotel room with me, which I very much appreciated. So when I got in, I met up with Lisa at Babe Library and we walked over to the convention center together and scoped out the area. We were able to get registered. The registration line was non-existent. There was one person in front of me, so it was easy peasy. We were there about, I want to say 4 p.m. when we registered, which was great. There was hardly anybody there. I picked up mine and Suleika's wristbands and all that. I got ADA bracelet, which I was also able to get one for Suleika as well, to have somebody with me. We picked up our bag check ticket so that we could drop a suitcase off at bag check to then fill it up throughout the day. And then Saturday, we attended the whole signing. The morning signing was from 8 to noon, and then there was a 2-hour break, and then the afternoon signing was from 2 to 6. And they split up the people based on a certain number. So there was Group A, who started in one room, and Group B, who started in another room, and then in the afternoon, you swapped. So it evened out the amount of people that were in one room at a time. And then Sunday, we were all leaving DC, so I spent a little bit more time with my friend Suleika. We went on the Ferris wheel down at the National Harbor. I walked around, I did some stuff with my sister and her friend, and then we headed home. One of the questions that I got was I anxious? And I am an anxious traveler. If I am unfamiliar with the layout of a place or where I'm going and what I'm supposed to be, I get very, very anxious about that. It has a lot to do with my eyesight and the fact that I'm always anxious that I'm not going to see a sign that I am supposed to see, and it's going to screw up my whole travel situation. So I do get anxious about that. If I were going by myself, I probably would have been high level anxious. However, my sister went with me on the train, so that was really nice because I have never been to the DC train station. So it was nice to have her there so that way I could get a lay of the land. I could probably do it by myself going if I went in the future, because now I know the system and the layout and all that jazz. So it brought my anxiety level down a lot just to know that my sister was coming with me. As far as the event itself, I would say I was not super anxious as well. I did try to do my due diligence before I went. I checked out the seating chart map and got the visual in my brain of where everybody was seated and who I needed to make a priority. I think the thing I was most anxious about were the line situation and the ticketed wristband situation, because I didn't know how long the lines were going to be, how long I was going to have to wait in lines, things like that. I've seen other people go to different events and seen like the ticketed wristband situations for that and what a frenzy it is, and that just gave me a lot of anxiety imagining that. However, it was smooth sailing at Apollycon. I really liked how they did it. They didn't hand out wristbands prior to the event. You went in and they let people get in line, and once they reached a max number in that line, then they started handing out wristbands to people. And then they would call those numbers back so that you could get in line. I really liked that. Then of course, you know, I'm sure we've all heard the Reader Take Denver fiasco. So to hear about that experience just a couple days before my first BookCon experience, that also gave me a little bit of anxiety. I was thinking, oh my God, is it going to be like jam-packed? Am I going to be like elbow to elbow with people? Are people going to be screaming and running over each other? Not the case. Not the case at all. I think they did a really good job of having just enough people there that it wasn't super crowded. The walkways were nice and wide. You could navigate through them. There were a couple instances where you sort of had to scooch past people, but for the most part, it was a pretty wide open, spacious event space. So my anxieties were put to ease and I had a great time. So this question I kind of already went over. How long were the lines for registration and authors? Because they had it so that deity ticket holders could register on Friday, I was able to register on Friday, so it wasn't a big deal. Now, Saturday, the morning of the actual event, was when more deity ticket members were coming in right before the event started, and they did have to wait in line. I want to say, sitting there waiting for the event to open, there were probably like 75 to 100 people waiting in line to register. Again, it wasn't that ridiculous because most of the people who were going into the signing had already registered in previous days. So I still don't think it was a ridiculous line to have. It wasn't like wrapped around or anything. It was pretty much a straight line. The lines for the authors, they did a great job of managing the lines. The two longest lines I saw were for Jennifer L. Armentrout, of course, because it is her event, and Rebecca Yarros. And I want to say those lines were maybe 20 people long at all times because they did such a great job of managing them and calling people's numbers once that line dwindled down. Those were the longest lines, and they had them in areas where they weren't getting in the way of other authors' lines or anything like that. So the line situation wasn't a horrible scenario. I think the longest line that I stood in was for Friday night. There was a Bookish Box arcane shopping event where they opened up their booth and allowed people to come in and purchase stuff. That event was supposed to be from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. You could line up at 7. I got in line about 7:40. I stood in that line for 2 hours. It wasn't like I stood in line for 10 minutes and the process took 2 hours. No, I stood in line for that entire 2 hours. That event was not worth me standing in line for 2 hours because they didn't even have a lot to choose from as far as purchasing. But I did get to talk with some of my lovely bookish friends in that 2 hours. So while the waiting in line to get to the Target was a waste, standing in line and being able to chit chat with my fellow readers and some of my bookish friends was a great time. That's the longest line I stood in. I was also part of the ADA line, Americans with Disabilities Act line. So there were about, I want to say maybe 20 of us max in that line, and we did get to go in a few minutes earlier than everybody else. The main line, that was a long line. You had to wait in line to get in the doors. But I feel like if you were somebody who maybe showed up at like 8:30 after the doors had already opened, you could have just walked right in, because I feel like once they opened those doors and allowed everybody to enter, it went pretty smoothly. So not a big deal at all, the lines. This question sort of tied into the line thing. Are the lines ridiculous? Not in my opinion. It was a pretty smooth event. And why are these signings so expensive? Okay, so why? I can't give you an answer for that. But I am going to give you a price breakdown, because this is something that I really wanted to talk about. Is I don't think anybody really emphasizes how expensive book signings are, these book conventions are. I think when you're watching videos and you're seeing pictures and videos of the hauls and the authors and the special editions and people having fun with their friends, you get FOMO and you want to be there. And so you might buy a ticket and then you get there and it ends up being a lot more than the ticket. So as for why it will be expensive, it's because you're going to have to pay for your travel and your accommodation. Those are the two priciest things you are going to have to keep in mind when you go to a book convention. If you're not from the area, if you live in the area, you're not going to have to pay for that. But most people will be coming in from out of state. I know Kerry flew in from California, and I know that plane ticket had to have been pricey because I've looked at flying across country, and I'm not doing that because it costs money. So keep in mind you're going to have to pay for those, okay? those are going to be the most expensive things that you pay for. So let me give you a price breakdown of what my entire 3-day weekend going to Apollycon looked like. Tickets. My ticket was only $28. I got a deity ticket. Now, there were Titan tickets and Primal tickets. The Titan tickets, I think, were like $195 by the time you add tax and all that. I'm sure it was like $200. And then the Primal tickets, I'm not sure how much they were. I think they were $250, $275. Because it was my first book convention and I didn't know what to expect, I wasn't willing to pay the $200 plus for a ticket. I was like, I'm just here for the experience. We'll see what happens. Once we had secured our tickets, because Lord knows those things sold out super quick, we then had to think about where we were going to stay. So again, if you live in the area, this isn't going to be a problem for you. I would suggest either an Airbnb or a hotel, and I would suggest that you find a group of people to offset the cost of that, to split the costs with people. Because we stayed at the Hyatt, which was about a 7-minute walk, if that, from the Gaylord, which was where the event was taking place. The Gaylord did have a block of rooms that were discounted for Apollycon, but even at that price, it was $200 a night cheaper for us to stay down the street. Before I started looking for a place to stay, I asked them, what is your budget? What are you willing to pay max for this weekend, your share? And we all came up with $200. That was what we were willing to budget for a place to stay. Our room ended up being $214 a piece, which we were fine with forking out that extra $14 each. However, Yami had to back out at the last minute, so my sister came with to offset that, and she brought her best friend. So it was 4 people, so the price came down even more. So that is what I suggest you do. I suggest you round up a group of friends and think about splitting the cost of it. I chose a hotel over an Airbnb because I just don't like Airbnbs. I want there to be free breakfast at my disposal, and I don't want to have to worry about cleaning up afterwards. No, thank you. So our entire hotel stay was $741 for the weekend. The price I paid as my part was $185. So once I got all that figured out, I had to think, how am I going to get to DC? Because I don't drive. My friend Suleika was flying in from Florida. My friend Yami also doesn't drive. So we settled on the train. We took the Amtrak. At the time, my sister had Amtrak points. So she said, would you like to use my Amtrak points to get there? Because she wasn't planning on coming. Her decision was last minute. So we were like, yeah, sure. So I paid $15 round trip for my Amtrak ticket from Jersey to DC. Now, when my sister booked her ticket, it cost her $100. So we're going to go with $100 total, but my portion was $15. So thank you, sister, for allowing me to use those Amtrak points. Think about, are you going to drive in? You're going to have to think about the cost of gas. You're going to have to think about parking. You're going to have to think about valet services or anything like that. If you don't want to drive, you're going to have to think about Ubering. How are you going to get from the train station, the airport, to where you're staying? You're going to have to consider that. If you are going to be flying in, maybe ask a friend to pick you up from the airport or something like that. Keep those in mind. So we actually had to Uber from the train station to our hotel and back. So we only took Uber twice, and the total amount I spent on both those Ubers was $32.31. I can't believe how cheap that was. I was expecting it to be like $50 both way plus, and it wasn't. I might have gotten the discount because I gave my friend Suleika my Uber code because she hadn't ever Ubered, so she got a discount. So maybe that's why I got a discount. I'm not sure. But $32.31 wasn't a bad deal. We also didn't really have to Uber at any other point because the area in which the event was held, it had a lot to do in that area. It had places to eat. It had things to do. It was right next to the Ferris wheel, and there's a little carousel, and there was lots of different like restaurants and places to shop and stuff in that area. The Gaylord itself is very beautiful. You can just walk around the Gaylord and stuff like that. So we really didn't have to go anywhere other than the National Harbor area for entertainment. One thing that a lot of people will invest in before they go to a book con is a rolly cart, because a lot of book conventions allow you to take carts. Now this was, I believe, the first year that Apollycon allowed carts. And because this was my first event and I honestly didn't think I would enjoy it and want to go to another one, I didn't invest in a rolly cart. They were anywhere from $30 to $90 when I checked on Amazon. So keep that in mind. If you are a first timer, you might want to invest in a cart. I did not, but let's say $60, let's split the difference. That's what you're going to have to pay for one. I just took my rolly backpack. Now, did it work? Yes. Do I wish I would have invested in a rolly cart? Not necessarily on this trip because I think my bag worked, but in future ones, I may want to invest in that. And another thing people don't tell you about is pre-orders. I just had the assumption that I was going to bring books from home and then I was just going to buy books at the event. However, you can do this, but if you want specific books from specific authors, you may have to pre-order because a lot of authors will be coming from out of the country and they're not going to want to ship in a bunch of shit to sell. I know Karina Halley did this. She had nothing there to purchase. You had to pre-order or bring books from home. Another thing is authors will not bring their entire catalog of books to sell. They will either bring their most popular or their newest releases. So if you want books that are their backlist or books that they're not bringing, you will have to pre-order those. That's what I ended up doing because I wanted specific books from certain authors. Nobody told me that pre-orders were a thing. So I pre-ordered from 3 authors. And my pre-order came to $394.20 because I wanted very specific books that they weren't going to bring otherwise. So keep that in mind. It's not a cost that you have to do, it's just something to consider. So another thing that was offered was the bag check. Now, I don't know if all conventions have this or whatnot. I believe this is the first year that Apollycon had it as well, but they offered a bag check where you could pay a certain amount and you could bring like suitcases and anything that you had to lay down to pack and put it in a different room from the signings so that you could take books from the signings and put it in your suitcases or whatever so you weren't overflowing with books. Now, I did not have to pay for this. My friend Suleika paid for it and we just shared a suitcase. So thank you, Suleika, for allowing me to share a suitcase with you, but the cost of that was $30. Now, we did actually fill up our suitcase at the end of the first round signing, so we actually did have to take that suitcase all the way back to our hotel and bring it back empty, but we had a 2-hour lunch period to do that. But we went in, we got our pre-orders, and we saw our priority authors first, and we had accumulated a lot of books at that point, and because I didn't have a rolly cart, she didn't have a rolly cart, my backpack got filled up quick, and she was running out of like bags to put stuff in. So it was really great that we had that option to offload the books during the signing. The room was supervised at all points, so nobody went in there and like took your stuff. The 2 gentlemen who were watching it were very nice. Again, it's not something you have to pay for, but it was an option that we utilized. You're also going to have to consider to feed yourself during these events. So think breakfast, lunch, and dinner, okay? I paid $0 for breakfast and lunch. I stayed at a hotel that offered free breakfast. However, I did not eat breakfast. On the day of the signing, I had a little like lemon tart thingy that I had previously purchased before coming to Apollycon. Lunch-wise, I either snacked or Suleika paid for our lunch on Saturday, the signing. So thank you once again, Suleika, for buying my lunch. Now, dinner I did have to pay for. I bought dinner twice. I paid for mine and Suleika's dinner one night, and then I bought my own dinner one night, and the total cost of that was $70. So, again, not bad, but do keep in mind you're going to have to feed yourself. And the only other purchase that I made was on-site purchases during the actual event. I started saving cash since last June because I wanted to use cash as much as possible. I knew it would be easiest for the authors. So I had that much time to save cash. There were a couple times I ran out and I had to use my credit card, but most of my purchases were cash. I spent a total of $346.59 on-site purchases that weren't pre-orders. So again, this is something you don't have to do. You don't have to buy books at these events. You're probably going to be tempted to. And if that's the case and you don't want to, I would suggest don't bring cash and leave your credit card, debit cards at home. Don't give yourself that temptation. Don't use Apple Pay or anything like that if you don't want to spend that kind of money. But keep that in mind that you will be able to buy stuff and you might be tempted to buy stuff. And boy, were we ever tempted. That is a complete price breakdown of everything that I spent money on at Apollycon. For the overall cost of everything, it was $1,802.10. That would have been the cost I had paid had I not shared the cost of things with other people. Okay? But I did share the cost of things with other people, like my hotel room. I got a discount on my Amtrak. So this is what I paid for the entirety of this trip. $1,071.10. That is still a lot of money that I was not imagining spending. I thought, oh, okay, a hotel might be $200, a ticket's $28, and my train was $15, and that's what I thought, yeah, okay. But no, you have to factor in all the other stuff as well. Just expect that you're gonna pay at least $1,000 to attend an event. And that was on the low end. That was as a deity ticket holder, okay? If you want more perks, you're gonna have to pay more money. But just assume that you're gonna spend at least $1,000 on an event like this. My situation is totally different from everybody else's. Some people may have gone and they might have spent a lot less than me. Some people may have gone and they might have spent a lot more than me. It just all depends on where you stay, what you're willing to spend as far as buying books go, if you had any pre-orders, how many people you're splitting the cost of things with, and things like that. But I would say give yourself $1,000 at least. If you are looking to like find ways to make it cheaper, I would say if you have like credit cards that do like flight miles, use those. If you can sign up for an airline credit card to get some flight points, do that. Share the cost of a place to stay with friends, of course. Get like those Uber credits for sharing it with a friend or something. If one of your friends hasn't ever Ubered, send them your code, let them use it. Find little ways to make it as cheap as possible for yourself. This question was, what do people do at this events other than getting your book signed? So I don't know about other events. This is just Apollycon. As a deity ticket member, I wasn't allowed to do much other than just get my book signed. However, they did do this thing called an Apolly hunt that was open to anybody. They were given donations from authors, signed books, art prints, things like that, gift cards, and they had people, their influencer team, go around and hide things around the Gaylord Hotel that anybody could participate in, and they would give clues as to where things were hidden. So you had to be paying attention to their Instagram stories for that. So I, as a deity member, could have taken advantage of that. I didn't because I was hardly ever at the Gaylord to take advantage of that, but it was something that deity ticket members could do. Deity ticket members were also able to buy an additional ticket for panels. So there are panels that different authors will go to talk about what they do with books. There were so many panel options I saw. Like one was like a fantasy panel where a bunch of fantasy authors talked about it. And at these panels, a lot of times they give out swag bags, I saw. So I could have added that cost on and gone to the panels, but I didn't. But that was that. And aside from that, just spending time with bookish friends and in the area where the event is being held, going out and doing things is what you could do. Now, if I was a Titan or a Primal member, as I mentioned before, I could have gone to all of the panels that I wanted to. I also could have gone to the parties. They had a plated prisoner party where they had like everything gold theme and people dressed up in gold. They had a Night of the Right party, which I saw everybody like dressed up in red and they wore masks and things like that. And I think Jennifer probably did like a panel discussion or whatever. They had an after party, which I saw a lot of people go to as well. They had a brunch on Sunday morning. So if you pay for the higher price tickets, you're able to do a lot more. And I really got FOMO not being a Titan ticket member and being able to dress up and go to the fun little parties. I really missed out on that. But those are some things that you can do other than just getting your book signed. This question, do I think anything could have been better for my specific disability? If you don't know, I have a visual disability, so I wasn't aware of the ADA that Apollycon offers until I had heard people mentioning it. So I didn't know how to go about utilizing that. I did email them like 5 days before the event when I, became aware that I had to email them and request that. So I didn't know, and they didn't get back to me about that, which I wasn't expecting, because they said, email us by this date so we can guarantee we can answer your questions. And me being a late person, I was just like, if they respond, they respond. If they don't, they don't. But during registration, I asked them, I'm like, you guys have an ADA line, I heard. Can I get a ticket or a wristband for that? And they said yes. So they allowed me to get a wristband for me and one other person who I gave it to Suleika to use. So I really appreciated that. It allowed me to get into the signings a little bit early. Not a lot earlier than everybody else. I want to say maybe 5 minutes before everybody else. But I appreciated that. I appreciated that they gave online seating charts. It allowed me to mentally visualize the rooms and how they were set up, the authors that I needed to go to. That made it a lot easier for me. I was able to zoom in and see where the authors were. And I utilized that a lot in the actual rooms, because I'd be standing waiting to meet one author and I would be like, okay, who do I need to go to next? Who do I want to go to next? And so I could visualize I have to walk over 3 rows and they're going to be in the middle. So that was very, very helpful. They announced the ticket numbers for the wristbands over the loudspeaker, which I really appreciated, because ain't no way in hell I would have ever saw those numbers anywhere if they had been on a display. They did say they were writing them at the staff table. I never even saw the staff table. I didn't even know where that was. I knew on the map where it was, but I never saw it. I think they might have moved it or something. So I'm glad that they announced it over the loudspeaker. If they had had it on screens, again, I would not have been able to see that. I would have been like, Suleika, what's that number? Suleika, what's that number? So I appreciated that. I also appreciated that all of the authors had big banners with their names on it. They had these little 8x10 printed signs that were on the back of their booth with their booth number. Couldn't read those. Couldn't read them at all. I knew that they had their name on it. If that was all, I would have constantly been like, where's this author? Where's this author? Because I couldn't read those. So I'm glad they all had big banners with their names on it that I was able to see. I appreciated that they had no uneven surfaces in the room. So that was great for not only me, but if you had a walker or a wheelchair, or because people were allowed carts, nice, flat, smooth surface, nothing to trip on, nothing to walk down, anything like that. Lisa could tell you that walking down things, she learned that I am not good at that. As far as accommodating for my disability, I thought they did a great job. I don't know if there's anything they could have done better for my disability per se. As far as anybody else's disability, you would have to ask them, but I felt like the room itself was very spacious. The aisles were wide. I feel like as far as accessibility, this was a pretty accessible event. This question I got, did I meet anyone other than my fellow booktubers? And yes, I did. First of all, I met my friend Suleika. We've been online friends for 10 years and I've never met her. She is a gem. I love her. I'm so glad we're friends. She is an easygoing, go with the flow, very positive person. I think standing in that 2-hour line, she kept saying, we'll make it. Whereas the rest of us were like, oh my God. Sometimes you meet people online and they seem like great people, and then you meet them in person and there's something about their personality or something about them that just irks you and drives you crazy. Maybe they have a bad habit you don't like or something like that. So it's always a crapshoot of meeting people online in person. I also met this girl named Starr. She was actually the very first person that I met upon arriving in National Harbor. I was walking around waiting for Lisa and Suleika to arrive, and she saw my tote bag with BecxReadz on it, and she shouted at me, and she's like, are you attending Apollycon? And I'm like, yes, I am. And we got to talking, and we exchanged some shareables. So that was very nice of her as well. Followed each other on Instagram. Standing in line for that 2-hour event, I also met Alejandra. So she was just standing there. She wasn't like part of a group I had known, but she started talking to us and I was like, what's your name? And she introduced herself and we got her in a picture with us and we spotted her the next day. She was a sweetheart, so I was glad to meet her. I also met Sierra. She was one of the lovely volunteers. She was the door volunteer for the second half of the signings on Saturday. And I was waiting in line and I was trying to like mentally visualize the room. So I went up and I asked her, I'm like, could you tell me who's at each corner just so I can like get a clue as to what direction I'm going in? So she did that. She informed me that Jay Bree's table had been switched and all that. And then she's like, you look so familiar. Are you on Instagram? And I'm like, yes, BecxReadz. And she's like, I follow you. So we talked about that and she was so sweet as well. So I met her. I also met Shelby at Literary Fairy, who I follow on Instagram. She was dressed up as Oren for Raven Kennedy. She does cosplay so well. She's actually the person who I saw her doing cosplay, and so I wanted to start trying to do cosplay. I don't do it as good as her, but you know, she inspired me. So I gave her a hug. She actually kissed my book and signed it in gold lipstick, which I thought was really sweet. And two of my other Instagram friends I met were Dany and Aarth. I've known Dany for a really long time. We've done things together in the past, but I had never met her in person. So she actually spotted me while I was eating dinner and came up to me and gave me a hug, and then I got a picture with her during signing. Aarth, she came up and gave me a hug at dinner as well, but I never actually saw her during the signing event, but I'm glad that she approached me. That's the thing, is like, these people kept coming up to me and like, oh, you look so familiar, which was so freaking weird, but I appreciated that because I cannot see faces from far away. Like, people gotta come up to me and be like, Becky, and then I'm like, oh, there you are. That's what happened with B, is I was standing in a room and she started walking toward me and I look up and I see this person coming at me, but like I can't see her face from far away until she gets close enough, and then I'm like, B, I know your face. So I'm glad people approached me. And to my former manager at Walmart who said that I'm unapproachable and I have a resting bitch face, you don't know anything, lady, because lots of people approached me. So those were many people I met other than my fellow booktubers, but I love meeting my fellow booktubers as well. Speaking of this comment, did you miss me? I wish you would have come. I really do. You would have had a fun time and I would have loved to hang out with you. You know who you are. You should have taken up my offer for a ticket. How badly did my feet and back hurt? I'm not going to lie, they hurt. It was a lot of walking, okay? Not only standing and walking around for 8 hours during the signings, but we had to walk back and forth from our hotel room. We walked around the grounds of the Gaylord and things like that. So it was a weekend of a lot of walking. I also had insoles in my shoes and my feet still hurt. I think they hurt worse during the second half because, well, I had been on my feet for 4 hours already. Plus, the signing room for the second half was concrete floor as opposed to the first half, which was carpeted. So I think that also had something to do with it. But it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Like, I didn't have to take like any pain relievers or anything like that because I was in so much pain, but it definitely, I could feel my age, let's just say that. I was like, my back hurts, my feet hurt, my knees hurt. It was. So if you've ever been to like a theme park or walked New York City, it's similar to that. You're going to do a lot of walking. Thank God you don't have to do a lot of climbing or anything like that, but it's going to be a lot of walking and it's going to be a lot of standing. They did have some chairs available in the signing room, not, I think, intentionally. I think a lot of authors just didn't show up, and so the chairs that they had for their tables were scattered about. So a lot of the times when I was waiting for Suleika to go through a line or something, I just sat in a chair, took a load off. You could always exit the room as well and just go sit on one of the benches that the hotel had or whatnot. So, you know, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but you'll make it through. You'll make it through. It wasn't that bad, I promise. This next question was best and worst moment. So the best, I think, was just getting to talk to and chat and gush with other people about books that you love, because I don't have a lot of people in my day-to-day life that I can gush about books with. I have my friends online, of course, but like my sister, she reads, but she reads completely different books from me. So me gushing about the books that I love, we're not going to be able to do that. My book nerd herd, we gush about the books we love too, but we all read different things, and so we don't have that. My sister-in-law, my mom, we read books as well. We just don't read the same books. So it's just nice to be able to talk with other people about the same books that you like, about the same authors you're interested in seeing. That was by far the best part of it. Getting to meet these authors and talk to them and just spending time with like-minded people. That was the best part of it. I'm not gonna lie, a really great part was when Marina Simcoe found me at dinner and chatted with me for a little bit. That was great. But if she hadn't have done that, just meeting Suleika, meeting Lisa and Jess and Kerry and Bea and Alejandra, all those people, and just talking books with them, so great. What was the worst part? Quite honestly, there wasn't really any worst parts of this trip. Everything went really smoothly. I want to say the worst part was just the fact that I had FOMO, that I wasn't a Titan ticket holder. I really wanted to dress up and go to the different, like, parties that were being thrown. So that was probably the worst part, is just that I missed out on more things that I could have done, more fun activities that I could have done. But aside from that, it all went pretty smoothly. So just to wrap up, I'm going to share with you some things that I'm glad I did, some things that I wish I wouldn't have done, and some things that I would do differently, potentially, if I go again. I'm glad that I color-coded my seating map. That helped a lot. I'm glad that I put my name on sticky notes and put it on the page that I wanted the author to sign it on. This is especially helpful if you have a name that isn't super common. I know Suleika was constantly having to like spell her name out for people, so sometimes she just showed them the sticky note with her name on it. So I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I brought a water bottle that didn't leak because I sucked that thing dry. All the talking you're going to be doing with fellow book lovers and the authors, your voice is going to start to get dry. So I'm glad I brought water. I'm also really glad that I saved cash. I would suggest if you're going to a bookish event, start saving cash as soon as you can, because I saved up $300 in cash since last June for this event. It made it a lot easier on the authors to take cash. It made it a lot quicker as well. I'm glad that we utilized the bag check because we didn't stay at the hotel, and that just made it a lot easier for us. I'm glad that I looked cute because I took a lot of pictures and people were always complimenting me on my skirt and my fae ears. So I'm glad that I put in that effort and didn't just throw on like a hoodie or something and some jeans. You know, do what's comfortable for you, but I'm glad that I looked cute. I'm glad that I had something to share with people. So I had seen people like making like bracelets and keychains and stuff like this. I didn't know this was a thing. I just picked up on it because I saw a bunch of people doing it on Instagram. So I was like, oh my gosh, I should do something. So I made bookmarks, and I'm so glad I did because I could hand them out to people when I met them, and it had my handle on the back and it had Apollycon 24. Whether or not they keep those things, I don't know. Throw them away if you want, but I'm glad that I exchanged those with people. And I'm glad that when I took pictures with authors, I held the book in front of me, because sometimes they have the banners and the displays behind them with their name on it, but sometimes I was standing in front of that. And I'm glad I had the book in hand, because if I didn't, I would have been like, which author was that again? Especially if it was an author who I wasn't overly familiar with. Some things that I wish I had done that I didn't. I wish I would have taken more pictures. Like, especially meeting the people that I met, I wish I would have gotten more pictures with them. I didn't get a single picture of just me and Kerry or me and Jess at all. And we were around each other for like 2 hours, and we ran into each other in the signing room all the time. So I wish I would have gotten those pictures. I think I did a really good job taking pictures with the authors, but with the people I met, I wish I would have taken more. I wish I would have been better organized with the free swag, because sometimes I didn't buy a book from an author, but I did pick up free swag, and not all the swag had the author's name on it. So by the time I got back to my hotel, I was looking through stuff and I was like, Where did I get this from? What book character is this? What author is this? No freaking clue. So a lot of it I had to end up throwing out because I just couldn't pinpoint what it went to or who it belonged to. So if you do this, I suggest you like write on the back of your swag where it came from. I suggest you like clip them together or something and include a bookmark with the author's name on it or something so that you know where the swag comes from. Also, if you do book plates instead of books, Suleika did this because she had so many books from attending authors, but she was flying, so she didn't bring those books with her. So she just brought book plates, stickers, to have the author signed. Write on the back of that in your handwriting which author that is, because at the end of the day, she was like, who do you think this signature is? Because I can't read it. So there is a tip for you. Write on the back of those what authors signed it. I wish I would have had a bigger cart. So I know I said I wasn't willing to invest in that, and I wasn't because I honestly had no idea. But knowing that, I wish I would have gotten one of those square carts because it would have allowed me to pack more books in there without having to leave the signing room and empty it out. Especially if there's not a bag check option, those carts would be much more spacious than my rolly backpack. Did my rolly backpack work? Yes, it did, but only because I had the bag check option. So I wish I would have gotten one of those. And the last thing that I wish I had done was stay at the Gaylord itself. Am I sad that I didn't? No, because it saved me money in the long run. But in the future, if I go back, I would budget to stay in the hotel. Usually hotels don't charge you until, you stay, you show up. So I wish I would have taken advantage of getting a room at the Gaylord and just saved up money for that, because it would have been a lot easier just to hop in an elevator, go up to the room, offload the books. Especially, again, if they don't offer a bag check option, that's going to be easier. It would have been nice to run into authors and other readers more because you're at the hotel. It would have been nice to take advantage of the fun activities at the hotel. So I wish I would have done that. Do I regret not? No, but I wish I had. And the one thing that I don't plan on doing in the future is buying a lot of snacks. That is something that several people had mentioned as a tip, is bring snacks. Okay, your girl overestimated how much snacks to bring. I filled up a whole ass basket from Dollar Tree of snacks. Not only for the signing event, but also for the train ride there and the train ride back. I didn't snack hardly at all. I think I ate maybe 4 of the 20 plus snack items I brought. So in the future, I'm going to limit my snacks to maybe 5 instead of 25. But I just didn't know. I thought, oh, I'm going to get munchy and I'm going to have a bunch of downtime to snack. And I didn't at all. Plus, a lot of the authors had like candy at their tables, or like Raven Kennedy, she had like chocolate dipped pretzels at her tables. So there were things that I could have grabbed to snack on in the actual signing room. So I would not do that again, is spend a lot of money on snack items. And finally, would I go back? Would I do it again? I don't know that I would go to other bookish conventions because a lot of them are further away from me. A lot of them don't have the lineup of authors that I've read from before. However, that being said, I am going to try and get tickets to Apollycon 2025 because I had a great time. I had a great first book convention experience. I loved spending time with my bookish friends. Suleika is even excited to try and get tickets as well. And if we are able to get tickets, because Lord knows those things sell out like hotcakes, I will take into consideration staying at the hotel and purchasing a Titan ticket at least. So that was my rundown of my experience as a first-time book convention goer, my experience at Apollycon, and everything like that. Thank you to everybody who sent me in a question. I hope my answers were good enough. If you have any other question, leave them in the comments below and I'd be happy to answer them. But if you made it to the end of this video and you don't have anything to say, please just leave me a money emoji because this shit's expensive, okay? And I need all the money I can get. With that, thank you so much for watching. This will be the final Apollycon video that you see from me. So if you watched the previous two, thank you so, so much. And until my next video, start saving for those book conventions. Bye!